Welcome to an extra special edition of the Chicks on the Right podcast. We have a very special guest with us, and it's Mike Davis, who you may know from such things as Article 3 Project and being a complete badass on X, being on various shows. He also has the ear of President Trump, who thinks, by the way, that he is the meanest, toughest lawyer around. And we know that you have to have an opinion about today's Supreme Court ruling. So if you would, for us lay people, break down what the ruling is and also how much you want to straight up murder some of the Supreme Court justices. Go.
Well, politically murder. Let's clarify.
Yes.
I don't need the U.S. Marshal showing up at my door, but I would say
You're
this.
not Dan Crenshaw. You're definitely
Exactly.
not Dan Crenshaw. Yeah.
President Trump says I'm the meanest, most vicious lawyer out there, but he's never said I'm the most handsome. So I need to circle back with him and say, hey, what the hell's going on here? You say all these other people are handsome. This ginger's not handsome. But anyway, so I would say I have a face for radio, so I'm perfect. With this Supreme Court ruling, let's just take a step back and explain it to your audience. President Trump campaigned on the fact that he is going to hire Elon Musk. He's going to set up the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and he's going to lay waste to waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And we just heard in the State of the Union address, or the joint session address last night by President Trump, there is a lot of waste in the federal government. Did you know that American taxpayers are funding transgender mice?
My gosh.
I learned that last night in the president's joint address. And so President Trump is doing the unthinkable in Washington. Remember, President Trump got 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, won the popular vote. The American people liked what they heard, and they gave President Trump a broad electoral mandate. And President Trump is doing the unthinkable. This is unthinkable in Washington, D.C. He's actually doing what he promised American voters he would do. He hired Elon Musk, who works for the White House. He set up the Department of Government Efficiency, which is part of the executive office of the president. He took over Obama's digital services agency and turned it into DOGE, and they're actually going through and finding waste, fraud, and abuse. And in about 6 weeks, you see Elon Musk and his DOGE team finding hundreds of billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And the American people, if you look at the polling, very much support what President Trump and Elon Musk are doing. Why would you not, right?
Right.
And so what's happening is these Democrat activists who run these non-governmental entities, these nonprofits that gets funded by the USAID and this other government waste, fraud, and abuse, they don't like the fact that their gravy train has ended, right? And so they are running to these activist judges, particularly Obama and Biden judges, and in particular in Washington, D.C., and they're going in, and oftentimes they're going in the middle of the night. They're not even giving the Trump Justice Department notice. They're doing this ex parte, and they're going into these activist judges and getting temporary restraining orders that in effect have a nationwide injunction and sabotage the president. Remember what President Trump's doing here with this waste, fraud, and abuse. He's exercising his core executive power under Article 2 of the Constitution. He is the chief executive officer. He is the commander in chief, and he has a constitutional duty, not just a right, a duty to take care that our laws are faithfully executed. And that means, at a minimum, making sure that there's not waste, fraud, and abuse in these appropriations by Congress. And we're not seeing President Trump steal Congress's legislative power under Article 1. He's not trying to rewrite laws or write laws. President Trump is not trying to steal the Supreme Court's judicial power under Article 3. He's not trying to decide cases or controversies. He is exercising core Article 2 powers. And when these plaintiffs, these left-wing plaintiffs, go to these activist judges, they are sabotaging the president and fulfilling his not only constitutional right, but constitutional duty. It's his duty to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And so
how does John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett then decide that one judge who voted this way to stop the freeze, what were they thinking?
Yeah,
because
they're essentially sabotaging the American people too. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Yeah, and our money, because it's our money. It's our freaking money. Yeah.
That's a very good question. There were 4 conservative justices, the 4 men as I call them, on the Supreme Court, wrote a powerful dissent with Alito and Justice Thomas, the greatest justice of all time, and then Justice Gorsuch, my former boss, the second greatest justice of all time, of course, and then Justice Kavanaugh. And so you have the 5 ladies on the Supreme Court. You have Chief Justice John Roberts, and then the 4 hens. And they actually wrote an opinion that, remember who this judge is? This judge is a new Obama judge who barely got confirmed. He's a dual citizen. He is this, he brags about how he's the first Muslim and first Arab judge on the DC federal bench, and he is a dual citizen to this day. He is still a Canadian citizen, along with an American citizen. I'm not quite sure how that works if you have dual loyalties as a lifetime appointed judge to the DC federal bench or any federal bench, but he is a left-wing radical, and he basically sabotaged the president of the United States when the president wanted to pause USAID funding to make sure, for example, we're not funding transgender mice in Mozambique, or we're not funding Hamas terrorists in Gaza who are killing Israelis and American citizens. And that's the president's duty under Article 2 as commander-in-chief, as the chief executive officer, under his duty to take care. And it's frankly shocking to me that the Chief Justice, along with Amy Coney Barrett, sided with the liberals on this case. I mean, the Chief Justice plays a game, and I like him personally. I clerked for Justice Gorsuch. I like him personally. I don't know Barrett. She came after I left, even though I played a big role in selling her nomination and getting her confirmed from the Article 3 project. She's certainly the biggest disappointment I've seen.
Yep.
But I think she's a rattled law professor with her head up her ass, as I've said. Mm-hmm. And, maybe she's overwhelmed. She has like 75 kids, and maybe she's just overwhelmed, and, maybe she
just hates Trump. Maybe she has a chip on her shoulder and hates him.
And I think the bigger problem is if you look at the reporting, is she hates Justice Alito, which is unfortunate. And I would say to these justices, we want justices who use their brains and use reason instead of emotion, right? And maybe we need to think about that before we put more hens on the Supreme Court, right?
Then what happened? Like, is there anything that can happen? What happens next? Because this is like, people hear this is a Supreme Court ruling and they think, okay, well, that's the end. Mm-hmm. This was on the emergency docket, and the Chief Justice plays his little game, right? It's called Chiefy, right? Where he thinks that instead of just following the law and letting the chips fall where they may, they have lifetime tenure, they have pay protection. The chief plays it. He gets chiefy. He thinks he can split the baby, and that he can help the Supreme Court avoid the political fallouts if he's chiefy and he splits the baby and he acts like he's the Speaker of the House, and he or Oprah Winfrey, he gives a car to someone and then he gives a car to another one. He plays this chiefy game, and instead of depoliticizing the Supreme Court, it actually makes the Supreme Court more political, right? Yeah. And then, and so that's what I think happened here. I think that you have a Supreme Court justice in John Roberts who thinks he's protecting the Supreme Court from politics, and he tried to split the baby with this ruling and tried to say, well, let's give this radical Muslim Canadian citizen judge on the DC District Court who barely got confirmed, who I think is a Trojan horse for trying to destroy our country. He's a Marxist Trojan horse, like a lot of these Biden judges. And so let's just send it back to Judge Ali, or whatever the hell his name is. Not Smith, not Davis, Judge Ali. We're going to send it back to this Muslim judge, and he's going to do a little bit more of a careful analysis to figure out whether he can fund the Muslim Brotherhood or not. That this activist judge is going to decide whether the president of the United States can cut off funding to the Muslim Brotherhood, and then maybe we'll come back up through the process. Here's the bottom line: as Justice Alito put in his dissent, the Chief Justice and these
four hens on the Supreme Court essentially just gave away $2 billion that we're not going to get back. And it's probably, a lot of this is going to fund, of course, they're going to fund, the left-wing interest in DC. Maybe USAID is essentially the travel agent and overseas party planner for the DC elite. And so that will continue at USAID. They're also going to probably fund a lot of stuff that the American people don't want funded. And it's a disgrace. The Chief Justice.
There's nothing that can happen. Nothing can change it.
And meanwhile, it drives me insane because we're so far from what the founders wanted. And this is the Supreme Court. This is why it drives me insane. Just as I'm a nobody citizen, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, they're supposed to know everything there is to know about the Constitution and our laws. And, I don't know as much as these people know, but I know that we're $30+ trillion in debt. So when Trump says, hey, we should stop foreign aid, maybe just halt that for a while. If I was looking at my personal budget, I'd be like, hey, maybe we should stop this stuff. And I would know that it would be right to stop it because we're so much in debt if it were a personal budget. This is the right thing to do. And then you have the Supreme Court going, nah, we're going to go ahead and spend the money anyway. We're broke.
Yeah.
We can't.
Well, that's exactly right. I would say this. The federal judiciary's budget is $9.4 billion in FY 2025, fiscal year 2025. I'm going to push, and I'm very serious about this. I just posted this on X. Now that the Supreme Court has refused to rein in these activist judges who are sabotaging the President of the United States, who just got elected in a landslide with electoral mandate, they're going to, if these dual citizen Muslim judges in DC are going to sabotage the President of the United States, it's time for the Article 3 project to work with Congress to rein in these activist judges, particularly the DC District Court. So I'm going to work very closely with my friends and former colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee. We're going to draft legislation that reins in these activist judges because this is unacceptable. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, is the circuit executive for the DC Circuit. So that includes the DC District Court. And he failed to do his job today. He failed to do his job. He let activist judges sabotage the President of the United States, exercising his core Article 2 Commander-in-Chief and Chief Executive Officer powers. And Amy Coney Barrett, as I've said, is this rattled law professor with her head up her ass. She's overwhelmed. Like I said, she has 75 kids. She's not up to the job. And it's an embarrassment. She's the biggest. She is an embarrassment.
Yeah. But do you feel genuine optimism about what you just said you're doing? I mean, is it possible to get this money back and to actually turn this ruling around? Because it is such a betrayal to America.
Yeah, it is. And the problem is, so what's going to happen is I'm going to push very hard. Like I said, this judiciary, what is it, $9.4 billion? So I'm going to push very hard for $2 billion to come out of the federal judiciary's budget to cover for the $2 billion that Judge Ali, the Canadian Muslim, is going to send to the Muslim Brotherhood overseas and transgender mice and the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett. Let that happen. So we're going to take a run at the federal judiciary's budget. They have too much money, obviously, when they're going after every Trump grandma on January 6th and throwing them in prison. It's obvious that the federal judiciary has too much money, particularly the DC District Court. And I'm looking at the DC District Court is the most out of control court in the federal judiciary because you have a bunch of Obama and Biden radical Marxists, and then you have a bunch of Trump pussies, right? So that's the DC District Court. So the Trump pussies will always figure out a way to get it wrong. Like they'll overthink things because they think they're really smart. So the Trump pussies will go along with the Obama and Biden Marxists. And so what I think needs to happen after the DC District Court spent 4 years persecuting Trump supporters on January 6th, as the Supreme Court clearly held in the Fisher decision, they have too much time on their hands. They're too big. They have too much of a budget. And I split my time between DC and Colorado. When I go back to DC, I've noticed that DC's street crimes have gone up substantially, like drive-by shootings in front of my house. Now, they're not shooting at me because I have guns and I'll shoot back. but there have been carjackings and violent crimes. Ed Martin's doing a good job of cleaning that up, the DC U.S. attorney. But what I think needs to happen right now, DC street crimes go to the DC Superior Court, which is not an Article 3 court. And it's, I think, unconstitutional because the leftists in DC pick their leftist judges for the DC Superior Court and they let crime run rampant, right? And so what I think needs to happen as part of these reforms that the Article 3 project's going to push through Congress is we're going to take $2 billion out of the federal judiciary's budget next year to cover for the USAID funding that Muslim Canadian judge sent overseas. And then we're going to look at getting rid of the DC Superior Court. There are like 10 vacancies. Why the hell do we want to fill those? Let's just get rid of the court. And then let's make these DC District Court judges, these Article 3 judges, who have nothing to do. Now that they can't persecute Trump grandmas for the last 4 years, now they want to sabotage the president's Article 2 power for the next 4 years. So what we need to do is tell these DC District Court judges, you guys aren't doing that anymore. You guys are going to focus on DC street crimes. You're going to you're going to make DC safe again, right? And then we're going to do a random assignment of judges around the country to come in and do non-DC street crimes. And so if there is a case that has a national implication or a federal implication, we're going to randomly draw judges from across America. So we're not stuck with these Obama and Biden radical Marxist and Trump pussy judges in the DC District Court.
Yes.
For all of that.
Godspeed indeed. Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. We've got to find out your reaction to the State of the Union. I know people are like, it's not a State of the Union. It's a presidential, whatever. The speech that Trump made to the joint houses of Congress. What was your reaction?
I mean, it was a grand slam by President Trump. It was the best presidential speech I have ever heard. The best not just State of the Union or joint session address. It was the best presidential speech I've ever heard. President Trump, look, this is what I always say about President Trump. He came in 2016. He had never run for office. He had never been in office. And he even admits that he made mistakes in his first term, particularly on personnel. And this is President Trump. This is not a guy who admits mistakes very often, but he even recognizes that he made mistakes on personnel. He had 4 years in office the last time. He got a lot of stuff done, right? But he was so disruptive that I don't think the country was ready for him politically, right? Their head wasn't wrapped around the fact that we needed a president like Donald Trump to break up the DC uniparty, right? And so he had 4 years in office with terrible staff who like Trump did it largely on his own, including transforming the federal judiciary. Amy Barrett, the rattled law professor with her head up her ass, was one of his mistakes. We're not going to make that mistake this time. And so then he had 4 years in the wilderness where he had the election stolen in 2020. And I firmly believe the election was stolen, and I'll stand by that forever. So he had 4 years after his election was stolen in 2020, and he faced unprecedented Republican-ending lawfare. The Article 3 project turned lemons into lemonade. We turned this lawfare against the Democrats. Now President Trump, what did we do? 4,500 media hits, constant social media, constant opinion pieces. We turned espionage into Democrat lawfare. We kicked their asses on November 5th on that issue. Now President Trump is back, and he's not making the mistakes he made the first time. Again, 4 years in office, 4 years in the wilderness. He is ready to govern on day one. He has the right people in place. Susie Wiles is a stone cold killer. I have the greatest respect. Yeah. I have the greatest respect for her as the White House chief of staff. She is no bullshit, right? She no drama, no bullshit. And I've been around President Trump and Susie Wiles, and President Trump, he greatly respects her. And that's the dirty secret I want your audience to know. President Trump, people think that he's a misogynist asshole, and I mean, he made like his models, and that's whatever. That's President Trump. He's a dude. You can't help it, right? If you're a billionaire, I'd be banging models too if I were a billionaire.
He's an alpha. He's an alpha dude.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I would say this about President Trump. He actually look back in his career in New York in the construction industry, right? The construction business. He had the first female construction executives in New York City, right? That was back in the 90s when no one had female executives anywhere, particularly in the construction industry. With President Trump, he doesn't like chiefs of staff or staffers men who are too weak, like Rance Priebus, or too strong, like General Kelly, right? And so you have to be the right person, if you're a man, to work around Trump, because Trump's too alpha. He's going to butt heads with you.
Can you, I'm curious, just along those lines, can Susie and can you, because I know you've got his ear sometimes too, are you guys able to criticize him or criticize his actions or his behavior, or like, what is that dynamic? Is he open to hearing when you guys don't agree with something he's doing?
I'll speak for myself. I've had many conversations with President Trump since the Mar-a-Lago raid. That's really when I became very close to him, because I was the only one defending him, right? And so I've become very close with President Trump, and I like and respect him a lot. And I tell him, here's the deal. This is what I tell President Trump. You like me now because I'm not on your payroll, right? The second I go on your payroll, you're going to hate me, right? So that's why I'm not working for him, right? Because he likes and respects me now because I'm not working for him. And if I were his attorney general or his White House counsel or any other job, he would hate me, right? He said he would make an exception for me. So at least he realizes that the second I go on his payroll, he would hate me. But yeah, I tell him constantly. I give him my direct and candid thoughts constantly. And, sometimes he gets pissed, but I don't care. He's not paying me. I'm not working for him. I'm doing this as a volunteer. And my only goal at the Article 3 project is to make sure that he succeeds as the president of the United States, because I think President Trump, I'm not a terribly religious person, but I think that assassination attempt
totally
showed that God has a plan for President Trump, and he's going to save our country and the world.
Right. And don't you think that President Trump 2.0 is so much better because of all the things the Democrats try to do to him, and because of the lawfare, because of the assassination attempt, because of just the beatings that this guy has taken over the past 9 years? They did this. They they molded him into a guy that is, listen, he was great before. He was great the first time. And we're old enough to remember him from the 80s and 90s, right? When he was
when everybody liked him.
When everybody like revered him as this great guy. But they have molded him into Trump 2.0, who is exponentially even better than the first, iteration of Trump, who was great. So they did this. They did it.
Look, I have since the assassination attempts, the first one in Pennsylvania, I have noticed a dramatic change in President Trump's mindset. I really do think he was touched by God.
And demeanor.
He understands that he has a very important mission, and that is to save America. Otherwise, our entire world is fucked, right?
Yeah. Totally.
If America fails, the whole world fails. And we have these subversive leftist elements in America, like this Canadian Muslim judge in D.C., who are working every day. They're evil. They're working every second of every day to destroy our country from within.
Don't you think that if we don't do it, because we've talked about this a lot on our show, if it doesn't happen now, then we really are fucked. Because this is it. If it doesn't happen, if these changes don't happen, if we don't get the budget under control, like our economy, everything, just our culture in general, if we don't get it all under control over the next, 3.5 years, then there's no turning back, and there's no place else to go. I mean, we are the beacon on the hill. And so this is it. This is the turning point. That's why when he says this is the golden age, I believe that. This has to be the golden age for us.
When President Biden, and I think he's just such a moron, just a demented moron. I don't think he actually understood what was happening. But he had very radical Marxists working for him, and they worked every second of the last 4 years destroying our country. They opened our border and let in over 15 million unvetted and unvettable illegal immigrants from the worst trouble spots around the world, the third world Marxist hellholes, particularly. And I'm going to say this, and I don't give a shit, particularly from the Muslim world, where they want to come here. They're not here to assimilate. They are here to destroy us.
It's the long game, right?
They're not here because they want to become Americans and they love our culture. They are here like they're doing in Europe. They hate Europe. They hate the West. They hate Christianity. They hate Judaism. They are here to destroy us. And we see that with that D.C. District Court Judge Muslim Ali, the Canadian, right? This is what they're doing. They are trying to destroy our country. And President Trump understands that, and he doesn't give a shit if he gets criticized for it. He is a billionaire. He has a better house. He has better houses. He has better cars. He has better airplane. He has better helicopter. He has a better everything. He doesn't need this shit, right? And he is going back to the White House. I remember after the Mar-a-Lago raid, like I went and talked to him. I went and had dinner with him. And I said, you have to fight this because you are the only person on this planet who has the balls and the courage to fight this. And if it's going to be some typical Republican cuck as our Republican nominee, they're just going to manage our nation's decline. That's what the Republican Party has become. They are just the janitors for the nation's decline. And President Trump is different. He actually has the world experience, the business experience, the government experience as the former president. He is the only person right now who can do the impossible job of saving our country from this decline under Obama and on steroids under Biden.
Yeah, because you look at like the Nicole Wallaces of the world who used to work for Bush.
She is such a fucking twit. I worked with her in the Bush 43 White House. I worked with her in the Bush 43 White House. She is the dumbest motherfucker in the Bush 43 White House. And that says a lot because there were a lot of dumb people in that White House.
I mean,
she is so dumb. She is so dopey. It's amazing to me that you can have someone who's borderline mentally retarded as an anchor at MSNBC.
And did you see her response to that precious boy?
Yeah, the 13-year-old boy who's fighting brain cancer, and Nicole Wallace is such a fucking bitch. Forget about this 13-year-old boy. I just have this I just have this hatred for Trump that I can't control.
Right.
If that means fuck this 13-year-old boy and throw him overboard, that's what Nicole Wallace is going to do. What a dumb dopey bitch.
Her and Rachel Maddow together.
Oh yeah, she's fine. You watch them. It was. I'm going to get in so much trouble. My press team said I couldn't say this, but it was like watching a losing women's softball team last night when you were looking at the Democrats. Just a bunch of angry women.
Right. And the
angry women with tattoos and marbles rolled up in their t-shirts.
Right.
They just look so angry.
Oh my God. And Mike.
It was so great.
The signs were like a gift to the GOP.
Yes.
Like I swear on our social media, I mean, I had who was it? Was it Jayapal who had the sign? And I swear it was superimposed, was like, I farted on there. I mean, it was the gift that kept on giving with all the signs. We were like,
last night, that watching the Democrats last night, it was like, this is exactly why, number one, we need to stop illegal immigration because we're bringing in these third world Marxist dumpy people, right? And then we need to end DEI because no other place in the world would these women and minorities be anywhere close to power, but because of DEI, they get promoted to power. Mm-hmm. They're sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives with the President of the United States with their weird signs and their angry face. It's just unbelievable. We need to get serious as a country about meritocracy and closing our borders.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just the fact that you can't, I mean, there are certain things that all of us as human beings, just as a collective humanity, can be happy about. A kid that has overcome cancer, you think that we could all stand up and clap for that, but no. But yet you tell them, hey, we're going to give more money to Ukraine, and they're like, oh yeah, it's great.
Or trans mice. We're gonna, we have Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts let the Muslim Canadian judge send more money to trans mice and fucking Mozambique or wherever the money's going.
What even is that? Is that a mouse with lipstick on? What is that? I don't even how do you know that a mouse is trans? Somebody has to explain that to me. I want that explained to me?
Because the mouse has its pronouns written on its little mouse collar, of course.
Is that what it is? Okay, I don't know.
Spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. It's on for mice.
What is our world? What is it? I don't know.
Well, Mike, we're at the 30-minute mark. We know your time is limited, and you're very busy with other shows.
Very important, Mike. You're very important.
Well, but we hope to have you back.
let me say this to end this thing. We talk about DEI. I want to say that the people I respect the most in this world are conservative women and minorities, because they have to take so much shit from the left because they're conservative women and minorities. So people like you ladies, Clarence Thomas, my favorite American, the left has, they exploit women and minorities to push their Marxist bullshit. And I just want to praise conservative women like you who have the balls. Yes, you have bigger balls than most Republican men to be out there in the fight. You guys have giant brass balls, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Where can people find you?
Article3project.org. And after today's interview, I might get sent to the gulag somewhere. So article3project.org, article number 3project.org. You can follow us on social media. You can donate, but do not donate more than you can afford. I'll spend my own money if I have to. And then the most important thing your audience can do is take action. Action, action, action. Light up your members of Congress. Light up your elected officials elsewhere. That is the most powerful thing we do at the Article 3 Project.
That and vote.
Action, action, action.
Yes, totally.
Yes.
Great advice.
Thank you so
Mike.
much. We appreciate you being here.